Okay, you want to make sure that your paper is facing horizontally. Sometimes that's known as landscape, since we are creating a landscape of a sunset on the beach. So you don't have to be exactly in the middle, but you want your ruler somewhere in the middle of your paper. Now this has worked out nicely that I'm using what we call a 9 by 12 sheet of paper, meaning that it is 9 inches wide and 12 inches long. So my ruler goes edge to edge. So I am going to line up the edges of my ruler with the edges of my paper, so that way I make a line that's nice and straight. Spread my fingers out to hold my ruler tight so it doesn't go anywhere, and I'm pressing my pencil right up against my ruler to make a nice horizontal line. This is going to be the horizon line. So the horizon line is where the sky meets the ground, or in this case, where the sky meets the water. So now from here, I'm going to start to paint. So you will want to start with yellow first. We're going to start with yellow in the center. And we have to wake up our paint because this is watercolor paint. So I'm going to get my brush nice and wet, and I'm going to dip it into my yellow and wake that yellow up. And this yellow paint is going to go right across the middle. Now the yellow is the lightest color. So we don't need as much water, because remember, the more water you use, the lighter the color will be. The less water you use, the darker the color will be. So I'm painting just back and forth all the way to the edges. So don't forget to paint all the way to your edges. This whole paper will be covered with paint when we are finished, and we don't want any white left. So now I'm going to go in and start to wake up my orange. Now, because when there is a sunset, we see different colors in the sky. So that's why I'm using the yellows, the oranges, and what you want to make sure that you do is whatever you put up at the top of your line, so above that horizon line, you are going to want to do the same thing below or on the bottom of it. So what we're going to do is come down here now with the orange and go underneath the yellow. Now, no worries if that orange drips in or gets in with your yellow, just leave it be. If you have any big whoopsies, you can always use like a tissue to blot it or just kind of dry it up real quick, and it's not a big deal. So nice and light. Notice that I'm using nice light colors, meaning I'm using lots of water to make sure that color is nice and light. And that's going to be very important with this next color, because we really don't see this bright, bright fire engine red in the sky. We mostly see pinks during a sunset. And pink is a lighter version of red. So I'm going to go in with lots of water and spread that out. Now notice how I have done all of that red. Now I'm going to go in at the bottom. Now what happens if you do a whoops and this is way too dark? What I always tell my students, just quickly, you want to rinse off your brush, get that paint off your brush, and just use water only and spread that out as quick as you can, because watercolor does dry fast. And that way it will stay a nice light color. So notice no white, it's all being painted a color. So you want to make sure that you go in this order. That way when it does mix, it looks nice and natural. We don't get any browns or anything. Now we don't have any green in the sky, so we go from red into the purple. And depending on the type of watercolor paint you're using, purple might be very dark. And this purple can be very dark. Notice how I used a good amount of water, but it can get pretty dark. So you want to make sure that you use a good amount of water to spread that out. Now remember, at any time, if I am going too fast, please pause the video and you can catch up. That's the nice thing about this being a video. You don't have to stay right along with me the whole time. You can pause it. So I'm going to add a little bit more water, and you might make yours, your color, bands of color, a little bit more narrow than I'm making. So this last step is for blue. So some of you might have big bands of blue at the top and the bottom of your paper. Some of you might have just small bands like I'm going to have, and some of you might not be able to fit blue at all, and that is okay. So I need to wake up my blue, and the blue is one of those, if it's a little dark, that's okay. It's really more a matter of preference if you want a darker blue or a lighter blue for your sky. But we want to make sure whatever we do at the top, we try to do it at the bottom, because the sky is reflected in the water. I always say, what color is water? Water is clear, but it reflects what's happening in the sky. That's why when you go to the beach on a really nice sunshiny day, the water looks super beautiful and really blue. Where on like a rainy day, it might look a little bit more gray and not as bright. So during a sunset or sunrise, we see all these beautiful colors in the sky and the water too. So now at this point, we're going to want to go ahead and clean out our brush and set this aside. Let this dry. So go ahead and pause the video. What's nice about watercolor paint, it dries quick. So go ahead and hit pause. We'll let your paper dry before we move on to the next step.